Have you ever tried to recreate sunlight in the studio, only to find it's way harder than it looks? Trust me, I've been there. In this video, I'm going to show you how I struggled innovating and ultimately nailed it, turning a simple studio setup into something that feels like real sunlight streaming through a window. Because as you know, there are levels to this. We'll start with the final lighting setup that I landed on, but I won't forget to take you through the twists and the turns of getting there. Sometimes the process itself reminds me just how much there is to learn. So let's jump in and talk about my main light. I modified a Nanlite 36-degree projection attachment using a glow to Profoto Bowens mount converter that I fitted with a piece of thick opal diffusion that I've had laying around the studio for years. Very resistant to heat. Not sure the exact filter number, but it works to make the Profoto D3 work more like a CLB LED for a more even spot. By the way, if you've ever rigged something totally unconventional to make your gear work, let me know in the comments. I want to hear those stories. Now, let's talk about some grip, because the weight of the D3 didn't leave me totally comfortable with it mounted in the adapter. Yes, it was fine, but you never know. So I created an additional support system. All the parts will be listed below, and I'll make sure to put them in a separate section in the description under Spotlight Grip Parts. So I have a Kupo 4-way clamp with a baby pin going into a Kupo baby receiver attached to a Kupo 3-way clamp, and this is attached to a 20-inch C-stand riser that goes directly into the Profoto D3 head, and then I leave the D3 tilt knob loose and I can tilt and lock the spotlight into position by raising and lowering the C-stand riser. I also mounted it on a Kupo crank stand to make lowering it and raising it a bit easier, as it's probably 25 to 30 pounds altogether. So now I want to hear from you grip geeks. This is your moment. If you have a genius grip hack, please drop it in the comments below. So why did I go through all this trouble? Simple, I did it for you. I have a lot of spotlights, but pretty much all the larger, more powerful spotlights for strobes are sadly discontinued. And the smaller ones aren't very efficient when it comes to power. But there are many efficient versions available for continuous lights, so I wanted to provide an option that you could easily get your hands on. Just a note, the flat front on the Profoto D3 is a benefit here, so it doesn't bump into the back lens of the spotlight. So you may ask, to create images like these, why not just use a Fresnel or a normal reflector? Two issues: light spill and shadow quality. Using a spotlight, I can control the spill with the metal leaves, and it gives me a sharp shadow similar to using bare bulb, one of my favorite ways of recreating sunlight in the studio. Let's talk about the set design. To replicate that factory window look, I built a custom gobo by cutting a window pattern into a 4x8 foam core. I also added pieces of torn plastic to replicate ripped plastic window installations and dirty up the light just a little bit. You may also ask, why not use a gobo in the spotlight? I have in the past, and with these larger spots, they are more prone to color fringing or chromatic aberration on the edges, which makes the effect look a little less real and more studio. And the smaller spots that use photographic lenses, as I mentioned before, are just a bit underpowered, even though you can get much sharper edges. Here, I could shoot as high as f8.5 at ISO 100 if I wanted to, plus more easily see the effects of the window just using the modeling light. I use a Kupo duckbill clamp to secure the foam core window, and I have it resting on apple boxes to support it at different heights in case I want to move it up or down like you see in these images here. So let me know if you're team DIY for gobos, or if you prefer the ready-made options. Trust me, there's no wrong answers here. For the background, I created a corner using 10x20 muslin and just 3 stands, thanks to a coupler clamp. A quick pro tip: electrical conduit from the hardware store makes for great inexpensive crossbars for hanging backgrounds. Just purchase 2 different diameters so they slide into one another. Also, if you're working with large muslin, either steam them the night before or have an assistant ready to tackle the wrinkles on the day of the shoot. It can easily take an hour to get all the wrinkles out and do a really good job of it. You can also mist it down the day before with water and let it dry overnight, and you'll find this another way that a lot of wrinkles will start to actually naturally fall out of your muslin. I use another 10x20 foot muslin on the floor and cover a chair and apple box with it as part of our set design. Now let's get back to lighting. But let me know in the comments if you like these set design and grip tips. I answer all the comments, even if they're not the nicest, but I do appreciate all the input and feedback and love getting back to you. There are a total of 3 lights used in this setup: our main spotlight going through our gobo, another Profoto D3 bouncing off a wall and back through the muslin. I have a black V-flat next to it to prevent it from bouncing all over the room, but more to just get the light to come from behind the muslin where it also gets warmed up a bit. And then I have another Profoto D3 going into a beauty dish gelled with a full CTO. I wanted to take advantage of the beauty dish's dead spot in the middle to eliminate any hot spot, and I chose it because of its relatively wide throw. So I could position it close to the Glow 8x8 frame with a TRP Magic Cloth. Here you can see all the lights as they build up. First the spotlight, then the fill bouncing off the wall, and then the beauty dish going through the Magic Cloth. Then here you can see the spotlight turned off, and then just the beauty dish. Now for something new. Let's go to the meter cam. At power 7.9, I was metering the spotlight at f4 and 3/10. Then when metering the background within the window light, this was metering at f2.8, letting me know how the light was falling off. The model's right side metered at f1.4 and 9/10, with the light powered to 4.1, which is only 19 watt-seconds. And the beauty dish measured at f1.0 and 6/10. When metering lights like this, I would measure dome down, and best practices, I would turn the other lights off to better see what each light was doing. When I measured the light bouncing off the wall, I left my main light on because it was having little to no effect due to the angle that it was at, and I was rushing a bit. So in terms of my shoot settings, I was basically shooting at f4 ISO 100 at 1/125th of a second, and the ambient light in the room for the video was f4 ISO 1600, right on the edge of the ambient light creeping into the shot. So one thing to note is that as I move around the set from the front to the right side to the left side, I will adjust the power of my lights up and down to provide some fill. For instance, this shot, I raised the power of my fill light by about a stop. And from some of the shots from straight on, I would actually lower it to bring the room down a little bit. I also use a fan behind the muslin to blow it against our model for these cool effects that you see in these shots here. One of the reasons I like building sets is the ability not to just shoot from one angle, but to really get the opportunity to move around the set to create more dynamic images. So I mentioned in the beginning that this shoot didn't go as I originally planned. I started out using a Fresnel with V-flats and flags, but the spotlight was just the best tool for the job, and that was to replicate window light. I spent about 2 hours pre-lighting the day before, and I wasn't crazy about the shadow quality or the need to control the spill bouncing around the room. So this shoot really speaks to the way I work. I'm constantly modifying and creating my own light shapers in order to solve visual problems. I know that they may not always be the most accessible options at times, but don't think you have to do exactly what I do. I want you to experiment, be both innovative and creative to develop tools that solve lighting problems you may have using tools and space that you have available. This setup would easily work with continuous lights as well. So please share this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And as you know, there are levels to this.